Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls and welcome back to Goosebumps Revisited, Series 2000. This week, I'm excited to visit Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid. This book was in many ways exactly what I was hoping it would be, a fantasy horror mashup. Stein delivers on the cover, and we actually have a dragon causing chaos in various parts of the story, along with some evil magical creatures, knights on horseback, and even a full-on wizard. All that being said, this book still somehow manages to shit the bed for no apparent reason. I haven't had a book take such a strange and abrupt downward spiral since The Abominable Snowman of Pasadena. It's definitely worth checking out if you haven't yet. Just prepare yourself to experience a solid story that suddenly gets hacked to pieces for no reason. This 1999 cover seemed almost too good to be true, a dragon causing chaos in suburbia, but Stein actually makes it happen. If I had seen this book on the shelves of the library as a kid, I would have snatched it up instantly, so it's a solid cover in my opinion. Also, I thought we'd take a look at the back of the book since it's been a minute, and sadly, it's still a shell of what it once was. The only promo we have is for Goosebumps on the web, which has been the case for quite a few books now. I am intrigued by the premise of really gross recipes though. Our front take says, "There's a new beast on the block," which makes me think of New Kids on the Block, and I think Stein was aiming for that, but let's check out the back of this book. The dragon's wings stretched like a ship's sail unfurling, and cut through the power lines over the side of the street. Electricity crackled and sparks flew as the lines came down. I watched, frozen in terror, as the dragon turned its massive body toward my house. It pulled back its head in an angry roar of attack. It's coming here, I choked out. It's coming after us. Okay, let's start this summary. The book opens with an introduction to Connor Buckley, and he is the King of Evil, which is quite the introduction to a character, but we quickly learn this is because he's into a Dungeons & Dragons-esque game that involves some fantasy and role-playing. I'm kinda shocked it's taken Stein this long to get to this horror game comes to real life kind of story. Connor then takes us back a bit to the end of summer break, where all these nightmare game events unfolded. We meet his friend Emily and learn Connor is a high energy kid who's always moving a million miles an hour and bouncing off the walls. The kids are bored out of their minds because they've accomplished all the classic summer break activities. Connor even says, "We were so bored, we were turning stupid," which is some choice writing. They eventually notice a garage sale at Mr. Zarwood's house, who is the neighborhood grouch, and he lives in a classically creepy house. Connor thinks they might find torture racks, bullwhips, and chainsaws, so he has high hopes for this garage sale. While perusing through Mr. Zarwood's piles of junk, Connor comes across some wooden candlesticks with mythical things carved on them, like elves, dragons, and some other strange monsters. Connor tries to show Emily, but Mr. Zarwood wants to know if these hoodlums are going to try to steal shit. Hoodlums is a great old man word. Connor and Emily can tell when they're not wanted, and they storm out of the garage sale and race back to Connor's house. Once inside, Connor reveals Mr. Zarwood might have been right to be suspicious because he did in fact steal a strange deck of cards titled Be Afraid. They flip through the cards and see pictures of magical dwarves, elves, knights, dragons, and husky little guys with pig faces. The cards seem fairly old, so Emily thinks maybe they should return them in case they're actually valuable. A voice then thunders out, "Prepare to die," startling the two kids. This ends up just being their friend Kyle, whose claim to fame is already having his voice change, so he sounds like a full-grown man in an 11-year-old body. This feels like the first Goosebumps book that directly references puberty, if you don't count the themes of My Harriest Adventure. Kyle is familiar with the Be Afraid card game series, and explains it's basically a role-playing game, and instructs Connor to find 4 dice so they can play. Kyle then divides the cards into 4 piles: character cards, action cards, power cards, and fate cards. Connor draws a character card first and gets assigned the role of King. Emily draws next as she gets the Goth, which in Stein's universe is a mutant sorcerer. Kyle ends up picking Krell, which is an ugly dwarf creature with pointy pink ears and an animal snout. The kids then all roll for power points, and Connor ends up being the most powerful by rolling 5s and 6s, while Emily and Kyle just end up having 2s and 3s. Kyle then tries to set the mood. "Let's get started," Kyle said. "The game is like an ancient story. Shut your eyes. Pretend we're in ancient times. We live in a forest. At the edge of the forest stands a tall castle." "My castle," I interrupted. Kyle ignored me. He lowered his voice to a deep whisper. "The forest is filled with all kinds of danger. Strange creatures, masked knights, mutant invaders, Krells, Goths, Mords, and Jekylls, strange animals, poisonous plants, evil enemies lurking everywhere." Not even gonna pretend. This is making me actually want to play the game, and it hasn't even really started yet. Connor draws the first action card, which shows a bolt of lightning flashing across it, and right on cue, the kids hear the roar of thunder outside. This book is clearly gonna go in the game is actually real direction, and I'm here for it. Another flash of lightning appears, except this time it's accompanied by a ghoulish looking face peering in the kitchen window. This just ends up being Mr. Zarwood, who's looking for his stolen merchandise. He warns the kids that the cards are no ordinary cards and they're very dangerous, but they lie to this man's face, insist that they would never dream of stealing anything, and are hurt by the very accusation. Mr. Zarwood leaves still suspicious of the kids and warns them, "Be afraid, be very afraid," which causes the kids to all burst out laughing once he walks away. They return to the table, and Connor picks up a card that is fully black. The lights then cut out, leaving the kids sitting in the dark. This causes Connor to become a little apprehensive, considering they just had 2 large coincidences in a row with this game, but he is pressured into grabbing some candlesticks so they can keep playing in the dark. Emily goes next, and we have a couple pages where she summons an army to attack Connor's castle, and he has to roll the dice to summon an army in defense. While this is happening, Connor keeps thinking he can hear men's voices outside and the clanging of metal, but dismisses it as the intense storm. When Emily and Connor's armies finally have to go to battle, there's an aggressive crashing sound and the cries of people in battle right outside the house. This freaks Connor out, and he quickly picks up the cards and shuffles them back into the box. The moment this happens, the lights in the house flicker back on. Kyle tries to calm Emily and Connor down by saying it just has to be another coincidence when an ugly dwarf creature burst into the dining room. The dwarf creature tossed his big round head back and let out a shrill, high-pitched laugh. He had black curly hair down past his shoulders and a short black beard. His green eyes rolled wildly in his head. He had an animal's snout in place of a nose. He wore a dark fur vest, very hairy, over black leather pants and furry brown slippers that came to a point. The little creature proclaims, "I'm free as a bird," and strolls out the front door into the storm. The kids are all bewildered, and Kyle finally points out that it was a Krell, just like from the game. Connor doesn't believe him and searches the card deck for proof, but there's no sign of the Krell card anymore, which really perplexes him. Kyle snatches the deck of cards to check for himself, and in the process drops a dragon card onto the ground. They all then hear heavy lumbering coming down the hall and think a goddamn dragon is in the house, but it's still too early in the book for that level of excitement, and it's just Connor's parents home from work. The parents are surprised to see all of them inside and ask if they saw what happened to the Nelsons' house next door. So the kids race to the backyard to see what's left of the Nelsons' house. The house has been completely obliterated and the entire neighborhood is outside looking at the destruction. Connor can overhear the Nelsons talking to some police officers and telling them their house was attacked by some sort of army on horseback. However, everyone else thinks the storm must have destroyed it. Connor immediately knows it was the card game because he sent an army to attack a neighboring castle and is in shock. He nearly joins the vomit count at the thought of what he's done, but he's able to choke it back down. Mr. Zarwood appears on the scene and beelines it for Connor, demanding to know if he has anything he'd like to share now about the missing card game. Connor is like, nope, and runs full speed away from this man and hides in his bedroom. That night, Connor has a nightmare where he can see himself in the third person in his bedroom as it's invaded by various mythical creatures and also Mr. Zarwood. Except in his dream, Mr. Zarwood is dressed in all white and giving off wizard vibes. I'm just gonna point out now that Zarwood is a pretty obvious anagram for wizard. The creatures in the dream all get into a battle and proceed to trash his room for a bit. Connor then wakes up screaming, "Get out, get out, get out," and notices his room is perfectly fine, except for the dozens of muddy footprints of various sizes all over the floor. He decides he's going to return the card game to Mr. Zarwood and accept the consequences of his actions, but when he goes to grab the game from his dresser, it's gone. Except then he's like, wait, maybe I forgot them on the kitchen table actually. Crisis averted. We actually never get any solid resolution on the muddy footprints and the dream sequence. Connor heads downstairs and finds Emily and Kyle at the table dealing out cursed cards like yesterday didn't happen. Connor's like, what the fuck you guys? Did you not see the Nelson's house get destroyed yesterday? And Emily and Kyle dismiss that as damage from the storm like everybody else and claim it's just a coincidence. Coincidence is like the word of the day. Connor does not put up much of a fight at all and is just like, okay guys, one more round, then we're returning the game to Mr. Zarwood. I want to know how all these kids are making peace with the fact that an evil little troll just strolled out of the house last night. They start to play the game again, and right off the bat, Emily draws an impressive sounding dragon. On the front of the card, the dragon rose up, deep silver, its long neck pulled back as if ready to attack. Long metallic spikes stood up angrily, stretching the length of its back. Its chest appeared plated, as if it were wearing armor. Broad silver wings poked up from its shoulders. The dragon's long snout was open in a roar, revealing 2 rows of jagged teeth. The flaring nostrils shot out twin flames, red fire and smoke. Emily then draws a fate card, which requires her to switch characters, so Emily is no longer the goth and is now the dragon. I was hoping for some Mad Madam Min transformations, but things are remaining pretty calm at the table. Emily rolls the dice to determine just how strong her dragon will be, and ends up being pretty powerful. Connor then declares he's going to send his army of knights from yesterday to defeat Emily the dragon, but Kyle has to roll first. Kyle informs the table that Krell are very crafty, so he will be switching alliances and working with Dragon Emily. He then ends up summoning an army of elf fishermen who trap Connor's king with their fishing nets and say Emily's dragon is coming to finish him off. The kids then hear a roar outside unlike any they've ever heard before. They can hear cars crashing and are racing to the various windows and doors, trying to get a good look at what's making all of this noise. When they finally make it outside, we get to see this dragon in action. We stopped at the curb as a broad shadow swept over the street, and rising over its shadow, I saw the dragon. tall and spiked and furious, just like the portrait on the game card. "I don't believe it," I stammered. The silvery wings rose up from its spiky back. The wings stretched like the ship's sails unfurling, and cut through the power lines over the side of the street. Electricity crackled and sparks flew as the lines came down. Tilting its massive head up in a furious roar, the dragon's bulky body lumbered forward, sending electrical poles tumbling to the ground. The dragon raised its giant foot and crushed a small blue car underneath it. Neighbors were screaming and running. I could hear kids crying. I saw a car squeal out of control and spin into someone's front lawn. Emily gathers the boys back inside and says she has an idea. She suggests that they put the dragon card back in the box so it could disappear, just like when they put the blackout card away yesterday. The only issue is, once again, they can't locate this dragon card. Connor decides the only thing he can do at this point is send his masked knight to battle the dragon, but he's gonna have to roll nearly 4 6s to make it powerful enough to defeat the dragon. Too bad for the neighborhood though, because Connor rolls 3 1s and a 2. The kids then watch as a small group of knights approach the dragon, only for the dragon to toss 2 of the knights over a neighboring house, and then sets the 3 remaining knights on fire. The dragon then turns its sights on Connor's house, since it was sent to kill him after all. Not gonna lie, I'm enjoying that we have a full-on dragon stomping around in this book. I didn't think Stein would actually follow through on this. The kids scamper into the kitchen and are at a loss of what to do. The dragon rams the side of the house a bit, causing drywall to crack and the windows to shatter. Connor decides just to stuff the game into the box as a last-ditch effort to make the dragon vanish, and it works. Connor stuffs away the cards, there's a loud pop, a flash of light, and the dragon is gone. This seems like a very easy book to survive. Just don't play the game anymore. End of story. The kids gaze out into the yard and can still see the enormous footprints and damage the dragon left behind, but they're too happy to worry about any of that. Connor convinces the other two to join him in returning the game to Mr. Zarwood, and Emily points out that he did try to warn them that the game was dangerous. As Connor's picking up the box, the lid slips open a bit and a card falls out. When he picks it up, he's shocked to find a picture of Mr. Zarwood, the wizard character, which makes sense given that we established earlier that his name is an anagram. Connor then tucks the wizard card into his shirt pocket. The kids are now second guessing if they really want to return stolen magic cards to a wizard, because he might get pissed and cast some spells on them. They head to Mr. Zarwood's house anyways, and pass through a partially destroyed neighborhood. Connor worries that if people find out he helped cause it, then his parents might have to pay for some of the damage. When they reach Mr. Zarwood's house, it's noticeably undamaged and it looks like no one is home. They pound on the door for a bit before it swings open on its own. Connor notices a mystery sweet and spicy smell coming from inside the house and can hear strange laughter inside. The kids decide to do some classic Goosebumps breaking and entering and walk into this wizard's house uninvited. They quickly spot the source of the laughter, a tiny brown monkey locked in a brass cage shrieking up a storm. They wonder out loud if this is an actual monkey or a person Mr. Zarwood turned into a monkey, when Mr. Zarwood appears to inform them that it's always been a monkey. He then demands to know why they're all standing in his house. The kids sputter to explain and eventually show Mr. Zarwood the deck of cards they stole while apologizing. Mr. Zarwood is not letting them off lightly though, and is like, "Sorry doesn't cut it. You all destroyed this neighborhood, and now you know too much." Mr. Zarwood then decides to get sinister, and is like, "Since you guys all like card games so much, how about you try living in the game?" This feels like an odd threat to me, because they're basically already living the game. I guess not though, because Mr. Zarwood proceeds to throw the cards into the air, and the kids are all sucked into the card deck like Robin Williams in Jumanji. After a violent transition into this game world, where at one point Connor thought his teeth and eyes were going to explode out of his body, he's suddenly opening his eyes to stare up at a peaceful starry night sky. He quickly spots Emily and Kyle, and they realize they're in a field next to some sort of tiny medieval looking village. They then spot a herd of little men dressed in ragged furs marching in unison. The kids drop to the ground, and Kyle informs them that they're Jekylls, which are evil hunters who eat humans. They remind me of Ewoks for some reason. Connor wastes no time and takes off running through some tall grass and ends up diving into a giant haystack with Emily and Kyle right behind him. They sit in itchy silence, trying to hear if the Jekylls are after them. Connor then realizes it's not just the hay that's making him itch, it's all of the bugs. My skin tingled and burned. Tingled. I twisted and squirmed, trying to move around in the hay. I couldn't scratch. I couldn't rub the painful itching away. I gritted my teeth. So itchy. I uttered a low moan when I realized why. Fat purple bugs. I pulled one off my face. I scraped another off the back of my hand. I felt them on the back of my neck, sliding down my t-shirt, slithering all over my back. Hundreds of them. Fat purple bugs crawling through the hay, crawling all over us. Yuck. I started to gag as a bug prickled against my cheek and tried to slide into my mouth. I spit it out. It left a sour taste on my lips. I gritted my teeth, forced myself not to gag again. I spit once more, scratched my face, scratched my chest, tried to rub my tingling back against the hay, but it didn't help. I'm gonna itch to death, I thought. After fighting off all the bug dramatics, Connor ends up sneezing and giving away their hiding spot. The Jekylls appear instantly and yank the kids out of the haystack, jabbing them with their spears. Connor wants to know if any of them speak English, but this just gets him poked more. The kids are all then marched to some nearby huts and backed up to a fire. At one point Connor says, "We come in peace," but these little creatures don't care and seem to be backing the kids into the fire so they can cook them. Eventually, the lead Jekyll comes out dressed in all white and can speak English apparently. He wants to know what kind of creatures they are, goths, krells, sorcerers, etc. And Connor just shouts that they're kids. Kyle tries to explain that they mean no harm and don't want to fight. When he mentions they were sent here by a wizard, this puts all the Jekylls on edge. The Jekylls then have a test to see if Connor is telling the truth. The Jekylls appear with a silver goblet of dark bubbling liquid. Connor takes a whiff and it smells like decaying meat, rotten fish, and skunk mixed all into one. It sounds a little like the black liquid from the haunted school. The Jekylls inform him that it's their truth-telling test. If he drinks it and is telling the truth, he'll live. If not, he'll die. Connor then learns that no one has ever lived after drinking it, and the Jekylls force the stinky black liquid up to his lips. Lucky for Connor though, a dragon appears causing the Jekylls to scatter, and the goblet falls to the ground. Connor licks his lips and nearly throws up, but the attacking dragon takes precedence. These dragons just so happen to have knights riding on them, and they proceed to destroy the Jekylls' village, giving Connor, Kyle, and Emily a chance to escape into a nearby cornfield. This doesn't end up being a normal cornfield though. I've never seen corn stalks this tall, I said, still breathing hard. They're so thick, and I stopped with a choked gasp when I saw a stalk in front of me begin to open. I saw quick movement, a hand, a slender hand reaching out from inside the stalk. Stalks cracked all around us, creaked and swayed, and opened. Hands slid out first, and then slender dark bodies, smooth and shiny, moved out from the unfurling stalks. Dozens of slender silent creatures, with smooth green heads, no features, no faces, leafy green heads like ears of corn before they've been shucked. Dozens, and then hundreds of them. The stalks creaked open, swaying softly as the creatures moved out. The slender dark arms stretched and stretched out from the stalks like rubber. Their hands slid around us, tightening, tightening. Stecks, Emily choked out. Remember the card, Connor? They're Stecks. I don't remember, I gasped. Hands wrapped around my chest, my throat, and tightened like vines. Can't breathe, I heard Kyle groan. Can't breathe. I squirmed and kicked, but the creature held on tightly. Too many of them, too many to fight. And then the Stecks opened, unfurled, letting more silent, deadly Stecks. What can we do? I choked out. What can we do now? You finished the story. That last part wasn't me. It literally says you finished the story. Now I'm getting why I was receiving some vague comments on this book, because I was having a good time. So now I'm curious to see why Stein decided to bring that to a halt for this you finished the storyline. We jump to a new character, Mark, who is outraged at this book's abrupt ending. His sister Amy wants to know why he's so upset since he's been reading that book for hours, and when Mark attempts to explain the situation, Amy just responds with some classic Stein slang that we haven't heard in a minute, thrills and chills. Mark then proceeds to spend 2 pages summarizing the book we just read to Amy. It's unnecessary. Amy then points out an entire deck of cards in the back of the book that Mark somehow managed to miss despite handling this book for hours. It's of course the same deck of cards from Be Afraid, and the kids decide to start playing it. Stein then spends 2 more pages having the kids basically relive the exact intro to the story we just heard, right up to having Amy draw a card, except this time the kids are sucked instantly into the game. So now Mark and Amy are inside the game, just like Connor, Kyle, and Emily were like a chapter ago. It feels supremely weird to switch these characters out mid-story like this, and then to have them continue on with the original story basically. The kids don't have much time to process their situation, because soon they're hiding in some tall grass as a dragon from earlier marches by. Mark thinks if they can locate the cards and stuff them back in the box, everything will return to normal. But when they check the area they first appeared in, the cards are nowhere to be found. Mark and Amy decide to walk into a forest because it feels safer than being out in the open, but quickly fall into some sort of trap as a net is thrown over them. A little pig man with walrus tusks appears and drags them to his house, where it looks like he's about to toss the kids into an oven, Hansel and Gretel style. It's also worth noting, this pig man has a pet that's shaped like a dachshund, except has smooth yellow skin, because why not at this point? Actually, this creature is relevant, because before the pig man is about to toss Amy and Mark into the oven, Mark snatches up this dog creature and threatens to toss it in the fire. This threat works, and both Mark and Amy are able to flee the pigman's house into a nearby cornfield. This is the same cornfield from earlier, because soon Amy and Mark are face to face with Connor, Kyle, and Emily, right where we last left them. I guess they somehow managed to escape though. The original trio banter back and forth for a bit with the new kids, wanting to know if they brought the cards with them, and end up deciding they'll just have to find a wizard here who can help them send them back to reality. They all then sing, "We're off to see the wizard," just like in The Wizard of Oz. Yes, this happens. When the kids emerge from the cornfield, they're suddenly face to face with an army of krells. We spend a couple pages as the group of kids are marched across the magical world, and eventually find themselves being backed up to a cliff that they will presumably be forced off of, until Mark has an idea. He suddenly remembers reading that Connor had tucked a picture of Mr. Zarwood, the wizard, into his shirt pocket, and thinks if they tear it up, all the magic will be undone. Connor thinks this is a great idea, and then the wind knocks the card out of his hand and over the cliff. Mark leaps over the cliff without thinking, catches the card, and tears it up as he crashes to the ground. He's then engulfed in darkness, wondering if it worked. We are then once again met with, "You finished the story?" We then cut to Ross, who's ready to yeet this book out the window in frustration just like I am.
What the fuck?
He's so upset with the shitty ending to this story he just read that he marches back to the garage sale that he purchased the book from, only to be offered a trade. The nice old man pulls out a card box called Be Afraid and suggests that Ross try the game out with a group of friends. But in a final page and completely obvious twist, Ross marches out the door and says, "Thanks a lot, Mr. Wardiz." So that's how this one ends, with no real resolution. I still enjoyed this one a lot more than Legend of the Lost Legend, so there's that. Overall, I thought Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid was a book that had a lot of potential that just kind of fell apart in the final moments. I get what Stein was going for with this game to book magic loop, but it would have been more satisfying just to finish the story with Connor, Kyle, and Emily. This book had a lot of moments I really enjoyed, like the idea of a cursed game bringing events to life, a suburban dragon, and even when the kids were sucked into the game a la Jumanji. I think Stein should have trusted his original story was solid enough that it didn't need those last couple, now you finished the story endings. I'm still going to give this one 3 out of 5 D20s. I had a good time overall, even if it did make me want to toss the book out the window by the end. As far as the vomit count goes, although we had multiple moments that came close to adding to the vomit count, there were no new vomits in this one, just gagging. This leaves the Series 2000 totaled at 14. Well, that's it for Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid. I now fully understand why everybody was being so cryptic about this book, and I appreciate that I was left to experience it unspoiled. Next week is The Haunted Car, and I'm going into this one with a pre-standing bias against it, considering Christine is probably one of my least favorite Stephen King books. But I'll try to set that aside, even though I find cars about as interesting as I find sports. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid. Did the ending ruin it for you? Or were you a fan of the weird mid-story reboots? Would you play Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid? I'd play a Goosebumps themed RPG, that's for sure. Also, what did you think of all my fantasy and game-based horror clips this week? This ended up being a fun theme to gather clips for. Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
The pride. The love.